Welcome everybody to Quantacast episode 15. Today we're here to talk about the Quanta Albury Medical Trust, which is located at 4 Baker Court, West Albury, New South Wales. On my left I have Andre Liu, who is our head of capital transactions. Welcome, Andre.
Thanks, Tim.
And as always, on my right, Stacey Jones, our founding director. Welcome, Stacey.
Thanks, Tim.
Andre, we went and inspected the property around 4 weeks ago, but I'm going to pass over to you to provide the highlights for our investors.
So the Albury Day Surgery is a 1,200 square metre day hospital in Albury, purchasing the asset for $6.4 million, seeking to raise $4 million. It's got a brand new 7-year lease signed in October 25 with a 6.38-year WALE, with a forecast distribution of 7% per annum paid monthly.
Yeah, look, it's not a huge purchase price, but correct me if I'm wrong, when we looked at the asset I'll get you to talk to how the asset circled back to us, because it did circle back to us. It's just one we couldn't sort of go past, could we?
Yeah, that's right. So originally the property went to campaign early last year for a variety of reasons, including timing, the purchase price quantum and the pricing expectations. We actually didn't participate in the campaign, but we've got very strong agent relationships. We understand that the property went under contract to a private in the high $6 million range, and fortunate for us, it didn't complete. So the agent came back to us. We had an opportunity to buy it. We bid what we thought was quite opportunistic pricing, and the vendor's actually the same vendor as who we bought Chermside off, so they know who we are. For transaction certainty and because they know who we are, they ultimately accepted our offer.
Yeah, look, with everything going on in the world at the moment, we think medical's a place to probably invest money, and hopefully the investors feel the same. Stacey, you came along to the inspection. What was your first impression of the property?
Clearly a very an important asset to the community generally. Very well maintained, very well used, and through our inspection, where the general manager of the tenant business was very generous with her time.
Yeah, she was.
In providing us with her view of the asset as well as a tour. You can just tell that, my opinion of that was that they're there for the long term. This they're treating it as their home. Various things that they're talking about are planning for the future. It is very well utilised. It services their current needs very well, and there's still room for them to increase capacity within that. Good activity there, great access, all the positives.
Stacey, was an impressive inspection. Shaylee, who we walked around with, who has been with that property for over 20 years, and clearly that business. And interestingly for me, we talked about the access to the building, so easy for people to come and just. We watched the actual transition of people coming, getting dropped off at the front door.
Front, just walk straight in.
59 car spaces, so easy to find a car park. But interestingly, there's 48 staff working in that facility, and which is quite a lot when you think it being sort of 1,250 square metres approximately, and 28 full-time staff there. And the practice actually sees 30 to 35 patients a day.
Yeah.
So it's very, as you said, very important to the community, and very well located, Andre, yes. Right in amongst quite a large medical precinct there. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's located in a very established medical precinct. Right across the road is the largest private hospital in the Albury-Wodonga region, surrounded by aged care. It's 5 minutes from the CBD. The operators of this day surgery also operate the eye clinic in town. We were told by Shaylee that they're the only ophthalmologist in the Albury-Wodonga region, and they service clients from a 2-hour radius driving distance.
Yeah, so I think there's approximately 100,000 people in Albury-Wodonga, and at that particular site, they've got ophthalmology, endoscopy, they do some IVF, gynecology, plastic surgery, and general surgery. And in talking to Shaylee, they have a sort of a month out booking, so they know what's coming in because they've clearly got to prepare for each patient. But it was just, you could tell from a community sense it was well known, because we know some people in Albury we went and discussed the asset with and to find out more about it, and very well known, and again I think the building's been there for 30 years. So but you didn't get that feeling when you went inside. It was very well looked after. I commented a few times, was it fresh paint on the outside? And it's on a piece of land there where you've even got a staff car park that's a way to give more access to the patients, and an ambulance sort of drive up to pick up patients where required as well. So it just seemed, it just, as I said, too good for us to not purchase, even though the purchase price is probably a little under what we'd normally, the value we normally transact at.
Yeah, the property is very well maintained. One thing that we really liked was that the air conditioning for the whole system, for the whole building, was replaced in 2022 to the tune of $450,000. They also did some roof works quite recently to the tune of $80,000. So in terms of capex, the quality of the building and services there, all set up for success.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Andre, we've already had someone out to have a look at the technical side of the building, so a building report effectively for those at home, and that came back really clean. It looks quite good, the report, no real major red flags.
It's been maintained very well. It's in really good condition for its age.
Stacey, you drove around Albury in general. For those that don't know Albury, what did you see when you were there?
Well, that was my first visit to the town. Even though it's one of Australia's largest inland cities, I expected it to be a lot quieter than it was. Incredibly busy, a lot of activity. I didn't expect to see as many of the major brands. You know, there was a new large format retail centre there, and some brands were represented multiple times across the town. A really strong services sector there, with particularly health.
Stacey, I totally agree. As you know, I've got a good friend of mine who is part of a reasonable sized wealth management business there. It moved out of Canberra, went to Sydney, did all things, and ended up in Wodonga, or Albury Wodonga, and very fond of the place. Has a very large network. In actual fact, they have 8 offices. That's their busiest by a long stretch. And the demographic of people there is, there's wealth there. There's a lot of ag happening there, and it's a very good has very good access through to Melbourne and Sydney. I think it's around about 450 k's west of Sydney and about 250 k's northeast of Melbourne, and also it's only a couple of hundred k's from Canberra, so it is a good hub. I think we looked into the growth as well, and it's moving up from 100,000 to about 125,000 is the forecast in the next 10 years. So it's buzzing around there, and it's looking.
And you mentioned the demographic. I was expecting it to be a lot older. When we were talking with Shaylee in particular, we sort of thought, an older demographic is great for medical uses, but they've got the reproductive, IVF, gynecology, those type of things within that as well, which is clearly more suited to the younger demographic, and you could see that through the town. A lot of families, younger people.
Yeah, good schooling.
Put down their roots in the town.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Andre, Stacey may have mentioned or not, there's been an upgrade happening at the public hospital there. And before you get into that upgrade, I did also, when I was discussing with my mate there, he talked about how that hospital had an overflow and people in corridors and things. But I'll pass over to you. What upgrades happening to the public hospital in Albury?
Yeah, the healthcare system in that Albury Wodonga region, from when we looked around, is very interesting. There was a prevalence of private health or private services in the health system. There is a public hospital, which is the largest in the region. We're across from the largest private hospital. There's an undersupply of health services. So there's a proposed $550 million upgrade to the hospital, which broke ground when we drove around. They were already breaking ground.
Yep.
So they're building 2 new buildings and an expanded car park. And that's to service overnight stay, some ancillary uses, including mental health and a few other things. And that just really demonstrates the need for these health services in the region. You
can definitely see that you need a new car park, because there's cars
everywhere,
parked all over the place. So, and I think that was one of the larger parts of the development that was happening there. But I hear it's desperately in need. It won't take away from what we're doing at our particular property, but it's good to know the investments happening into that region as well. Andre, let's pull the lease apart, because it's a real advantage to this property.
The operator's been there for over 30 years. They just signed a brand new 7-year lease in October 2025. The base rent is around $385 a square metre net, which we think is quite low. We've seen medical assets in that sort of 400, 500, up to 600 for this style of product on a rate per square metre. It's a net lease, so all outgoings are recoverable except for management, but we've accounted for that in the net income. And the annual reviews are CPI. It's got a cap and a collar, so a minimum of a 2.5% increase, up to 5.5%.
Andre, let's be more specific about the internals of the building. Talk to me about that.
So it's an approximately 1,300 square metre day hospital. It's got 3 operating theatres. It has a central sterile services department, which is a critical infrastructure for sterilisation of hospitals where they're doing operations. And then they have stage 1 recovery, which are in beds. And then they have a stage 2 recovery section, which are in chairs.
Which was a really large room, Andre. Plenty of TVs, all the things. It was very well run, that recovery room in particular.
Yeah, so basically as patients inflow, they sit in the waiting room. As they get called, they get changed, they get ready, prepped, go into surgery. Post that, they go into stage 1 and then stage 2 and then ultimately leave.
And 30 to 35 patients a day is a lot.
Yes.
I was surprised by that number. But
yeah, with 3 surgeries.
It's basically back to back, and I think they only operate Monday to Friday, so they're not doing the weekend. So you can see why they're busy the entire time, and they've got so many staff working there. Stacey, I'll hand over to you, as I always do, around the investor piece and the fund structure. It's no secret that medical's at the top of our list, or that in industrial, when we get our survey results from our investors. So again, we're meeting that need, I hope. And I think in this kind of crazy world we're in at the moment, medical's not something that should be affected by
No,
fuel
unfortunately,
and all
people
the
don't
other things.
stop getting sick or needing eye surgery or whatever the case because fuel spiked.
That's right.
No.
So I'll just hand over to you because we need to do that as part of our Quantacast. What's the trust structure?
As usual, it's closed-ended, 7-year term. For those who haven't watched previous Quantacasts or understand how that structure works, we while it's got a 7-year trust structure, if we got to the end of that and for whatever reason, our recommendation was that we should hold it for longer. We can't just do that of our own volition. We have to go to investors and seek consent to do that. Otherwise, it closes within its 7 years, earlier if that's what works for the cycle of the relevant asset. Only the one asset in the trust, so investors know exactly what they're putting their money into and they understand the timing from the outset.
Great, thank you, Andre. I will pass over to you now. You can talk about all the strengths of the investment itself, but my personal view, and I know Stacey shares the same. It's a very, I guess, a core asset. Great. I love the lease term on it. It's tuck your money in there, let it do its thing, and we otherwise don't have a lot of capex based on the report we've received so far. But over to you to sort of really highlight the investment metrics.
Yeah, so for a few reasons we really like it. So the operator's been there for over 30 years. They just signed a brand new 7-year lease in October 2025. So by settlement, we've got a WALE of about 6.38 years. We're buying this at a 7.3% yield. We've seen medical assets in very similar medical assets selling in that sort of 6.5 to 7% range. So we think it's great value for what it is. Great operator, strong lease term. It fits in well with a trust term, so 6.38 years. We'll reset the lease, set it up for success, and then sell it within the trust term. 7% distribution, we think is just a very solid distribution for that style of product. The net lease, so all our goings are recoverable except for management, but we've factored that in. CPI reviews with a cap and collar, so it can't. The minimum increase is 2.5%, but it's a CPI increase up to 5.5%. Like we said again, brand new 7-year lease, personal guarantees, bank guarantee, just really solid lease structure.
Thanks, Andre. And as always, we don't buy things unless we really like them, Stacey. So we're really keen on this asset. It's not a large raise at $4 million. We're going to open so that people can invest a minimum of $50,000 rather than $100,000. It looks like we're going to release the IM in the first couple of weeks of April, so post Easter. Yep. So we're looking forward to putting that out to the investors, but it won't stick around for very long. Look, Andre, thanks for being with us today and sharing all the information. There'll be plenty more in the IM. Stacey, thanks for being with us also, and we look forward to bringing you another Quantacast soon.